Alice Zwicker was born on August 6, 1916, in the small town of Brownville, Maine. She was the third of 7 Zwicker children who all grew up as hard-working members of the family. Although they were hard-working, the family would spend their free time sharing their love of music. Alice's mother, Alice, and her older sister, Catherine, would play piano while the rest of the family would sing along. To say the least, the Zwicker family was very close and enjoyed spending time together. Alice had always been a helpful child, and she had known from a very early age that she wanted to become a nurse. In high school, Alice really came to know that she enjoyed doing things for other people. At 18 years old, Alice started training as a nurse. In early September of 1934, she began her training in Bangor at what was then called the Eastern Maine General Hospital. Alice was one of 18 nurses who graduated from Eastern Maine General School of Nursing in 1937. After graduating, Alice did general nursing at a small private hospital in Milo, Maine. She also nursed at Mayo Hospital in Dover-Foxcroft until she was appointed a position as charge nurse at the Eastern Maine General Hospital where she had studied. After working for some time in the hospital, Alice decided to join the Army Nurse Corps. She decided to do this because she would be paid more, but also because of the adventure it would offer. Alice took the oath in March of 1941 in Bangor, Maine, having no idea of what dangers lay ahead. In October of the same year, Alice and a group of other nurses boarded the U.S. Army transport Willard A. Holbrook to set sail for the Philippines. No one expected there to be any real danger when she arrived. The nurses knew that the real war was happening in Europe, and that it was highly unlikely they would be bothered in their current station. On November 24, General MacArthur received a message from Washington, D.C. warning of a possible aggressive attack by the Empire of Japan on Bataan. Although unaware of this fact, the entire base could sense a growing tension as they practiced blackouts more frequently, and gun crews slept at their emplacements. After much bombing, the Japanese advanced to within a few miles of hospitals number 1 and 2. On April 8th, Colonel Duckworth ordered immediate evacuation. Alice herself once wrote, "The evacuation of Bataan was like something I'd seen in a movie. Newsreels of the countries in Europe and people evacuating before the onslaught of Hitler's armies. This could be the same thing." Alice left Bataan to go to a small island called Corregidor. On Corregidor, Alice and all of the other nurses worked in what was known as the Corregidor Tunnel. This was a large underground area that kept them safe from bombs. On May 5, 1942, the Japanese landed on Corregidor, and the U.S. were forced to surrender. In her writing, Alice expressed a relief to the end of the fighting, but also a fear of what was to come. It was at that time that Alice and the other remaining nurses were taken as prisoners of war by the Japanese. Alice spent a lot of her time in the internment camp on Manila reading and keeping 2 notebooks which tell us a little bit about her time spent at the camp. Even so, it was still a restrictive internment camp. Lack of sufficient number of showers created bed bugs, which made living conditions horrible. There were over 4,000 people in the camp, and the last year was one filled with famine. On September 21, 1944, the prisoners spotted American planes flying over the camp. This was after spending 3 years in the internment camp. Alice later said, "A beautiful sight, I must say. Those boys could fly." After January 6th, the raids were daily, and the weeks dragged into months of hunger and warfare. The nurses kept going only to take care of others who were more wounded than themselves. Alice was working in the hospital when she first saw American soldiers outside coming to liberate the entire camp. 9 days after liberation, Alice and 65 other nurses departed Santo Tomas to be flown to Leyte. They stayed 8 weeks to regain their strength. Many were hospitalized and brought back to health. After this, the nurses started their journey back to California. On the way, they stopped in Hawaii. There is a famous picture of Alice shopping there, where she has stopped to smell perfumes. This picture was featured in multiple magazines and newspapers around the nation. Upon arrival in California, a welcome celebration had been arranged. The Army nurses were put in a hospital for rehabilitation. It was during the first week back in the States that Alice was able to call her family back in Maine. On March 3, 1945, Alice finally was able to return home to Brownville, Maine. She sent a telegram to her family saying, "Arrive Bangor at 8:30, Sunday by air. Can hardly wait to see you all. Love, Alice." Alice was interviewed many times upon her arrival in the United States. One thing that Alice said in an interview was, "It is hard to believe that I am almost home. I have dreamed about it so much. I can hardly believe that I am almost ready to see my mother." After returning home, Alice shared her story with people all over the country. Her heroism and patriotism are truly inspiring. If you would like to find out more about Alice Zwicker, you can find her biography written by Walter M. McDougall, which shares stories about this World War II nurse in the war zone and at home.